Joining us now from Charlotte, North Carolina, Skyping in, Steve Peterson, who served as a special agent for the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration for nearly 3 decades. Steve is known as Badman to over 100,000 law enforcement professionals in the country. In actuality, our guest says he's just an ordinary guy battling the forces of evil in extraordinary ways. And Steve, we welcome you in via Skype from Charlotte here to America's Forum. The border remains a focus, the drug cartels, and now with the, I won't call them all children, the minors coming in. What are we seeing right now on our border with Mexico in terms of the involvement of the cartels?
Well, you're going to see, well, you probably won't see, that's the problem. You won't see the cartels kind of jumping for joy as all our resources go to dealing with this huge influx of women and children rushing across our borders. As our resources focus on that, it takes our eyes off the ball about the cartels and their drug smuggling. So they're very excited about it. In fact, they're endorsing this, they're promoting this south of the border to allow them to have freer access to the avenues and smuggling routes that they typically use.
So in one sense, they're able just to continue because our Border Patrol and all the law enforcement is being overwhelmed. But in another sense, do you know of any active involvement where the cartels are posing as coyotes, where they're coming in along with the children of Central America?
I can't give you any specifics on that, but they don't really need to pose as coyotes. They, in fact, are the coyotes. They are coming across the borders in droves. They are coming across with this group because while the women and children are going and flagging down Border Patrol to get their attention, to get this amnesty that they believe they deserve, the drug traffickers are going in the opposite direction. They're coming across the borders at the same time, but as one group of people seeks out law enforcement, the other guys, the bad guys, they go in the opposite direction. But they're certainly getting across the border at the same time using the same methods.
So we're hearing talk, given the frustration of so many Americans, and I remember back when the Minutemen patrolled the border a decade ago, and there were catcalls from various newspapers, oh, they're going to go incite problems. We are hearing some talk that some armed militias in the United States are heading southward to try and augment the Border Patrol. In your mind, is that a wise thing to do?
Well, I have mixed emotions about it. Yes and no. I say yes because the federal government is doing nothing. And if we want to keep our borders sovereign, then we need to step up to the plate and do it ourselves. The downside to that is we will encounter more resistance from our own government in attempting to secure our own borders than we will from the traffickers. The traffickers, the organization, the guys smuggling in both drugs and humans, right now it's just open, and until they start to incur any type of resistance, it's going to remain that way. Now, if we can send our own people down there to secure the borders, being that when I say our own, maybe state organizations, private citizens, if we go down there, they'll just go around us, and we'll end up, those militia, those people down there trying to secure the borders are going to encounter more resistance, not from traffickers, but from our own federal government, who feel that it's the federal government's job to do this, but in fact, at the same time, they're not doing it.
Steve, I think back to reports I got during my days in Congress, the Mexican elite forces who went over to the cartels, Los Zetas. There was one situation where I heard directly from law enforcement that the new FBI bureau chief down in El Paso got a call on his private cell phone where a fellow identified himself as the head of the Zetas, and he said to this FBI agent, hey, listen, just want you to know, if you've heard any talk about us targeting you, we don't operate that way, but we're happy to go after the guy who is spreading the rumors if you would like us to. Now, psychologically, that has to give even the most seasoned law enforcement professional pause. But what I've heard subsequently is that the Zetas, who prior to this were not lining up against law enforcement, now they may have turned the corner, especially in terms of border sheriffs and border deputies, both in Texas and Arizona. Have you heard any of that talk?
Yes, I have. In fact, just a few weeks ago, you could see signs of this along the borders. If you went into Texas, for example, you would find effigies, mannequins, hung from billboards and graffiti sprayed on these billboards above these mannequins would say silver or lead in Spanish, plata o plumo. In other words, accept our bribes or accept our bullets. You'll either accept our payoffs or we'll kill you. This was done to intimidate law enforcement along the borders. Now, if you went just inside the Mexican side, you went into the Mexico side of the borders, you wouldn't see mannequins. You would actually see human beings hung from overpasses, hung from billboards with the same symbols painted above them. And they were doing this certainly to intimidate law enforcement. Because if they can get enough good people to leave, the only people left behind are going to be those corrupt, those involved in the organizations, and those who just don't care to fight the traffickers. They're trying to intimidate us. They're becoming more active. But none of this is coming out. You're not seeing this broadcast outside of the border cities, which to me is a crime.
Well, Steve, I want to get your reaction to some news coming from the administration over the weekend, and apparently the Obama administration ordering a quote-unquote surge to the borders to up the deportations. Is there anything really to this, or do you think this is just simply lip service coming from the administration?
That's all it is. It's lip service. We're rushing to the borders to return the immigrants. Is that the theory? This is why we sent our vice president down to Central America to meet with the heads of Guatemala and so forth, so that we could pay them billions of dollars to keep their own people in their own country. This is absolutely ludicrous. You want to do something with that money? Number one, we certainly have enough homeless women and children in this country who are citizens who need our help. We don't need to be accepting everybody. We're generous. We're generous people, and we're not mean or cruel. And you're playing on our humanities, but we can't allow our sovereignty to just disappear because we can't take care of the entire world. We're already a bankrupt nation as it is.
No,
so we have to secure these borders better than we're doing.
Now, there's been a lot made about the failure of this administration to come back swiftly and tell these folks, because word apparently is getting out that there are open borders here, there are open arms waiting for these, and there's been a lot of criticism towards the administration for not saying definitively, we will not accept these people, they will be sent back. Do you think if this message, maybe it is just lip service, but is that lip service getting to these folks in South American countries and Central American countries where the people are coming from?
No, it's not. Because look what's happening. They're coming into the U.S. and we're giving them lip service that we're going to send them back. But how many have we really sent back? Instead, we're shipping plane loads to Massachusetts and other states to house them temporarily until we can integrate them into our society. If we really wanted to make a statement, we'd fill the plane loads, we'd fly it back to the countries they came from, and we'd drop them off and say, listen, we're sorry to do this. We know you don't have the resources. We don't have the resources either, but this is your problem, not ours. You do that a couple of times, that word will get out.
Steve Peterson, we have concentrated heretofore on the border, and obviously your interest in crime and your past involvement with DEA. I'm wondering what you're hearing about the drug cartels moving into major American cities. There was a report when I transitioned out of Congress back to broadcasting, a story that I broke nationally, the fear that the cartels had come into Phoenix, Arizona, and of course, after the fact, the Phoenix Police Department said, oh, no, 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 and then a couple weeks later, they put out a statement saying, now, when that does happen, we shouldn't be surprised, or words to that effect. What are you hearing about places such as San Diego, Phoenix, even further away from the border, cities like Chicago? Have the Mexican cartels actively moved into major American cities with a physical presence far from the border?
Yes, they have. And they're allowed to do this because we are basically not enforcing our borders at all. And some cities, for example, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. We don't have any one particular cartel affiliation presence that overcomes the others. So we're actually kind of sought out by many cartels because it allows multiple organizations to come in here and set up shop and distribute wares. But you go into larger cities, Chicago, Phoenix, like you were mentioning, San Diego, you're going to have specific cartels taking over those cities, almost like turf battles, kind of like the Bloods and the Crips. So whereas one city might be controlled by the Sinaloa cartel, the Zetas may go to another city because They don't want to battle each other. There's plenty of cities around in the U.S. that have the availability and have the appetite for the contraband that these cartels are bringing in, and we're allowing this to happen.
Steve, in the minute we have left, if that's going on with the cartels, I shudder to think about sleeper cells, about the Iranians or others who wish us ill. In your opinion, do you believe that sleeper cells are now in the United States courtesy of our porous borders?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, we've had intelligence that shows us that cartels are training with terrorist cells in Venezuela. So it's going on now. And then the terrorists are using the cartels to bring them across the borders in the same routes and the same methods that they've been bringing in narcotics and human trafficking. So the cartels and the terrorist organizations are working together. Don't think for a second they're not. Don't downplay it, because this is something that should everybody in the nation should be terrified of.
And that's why
the people on the border.
That's why we're so happy you're giving voice to it. It's tough news, but again, we're not the media, we're Newsmax, and we want to get it out and tell the people. Steve Peterson, Skyping in from Charlotte. We thank you for your input and your analysis of what is transpiring. We look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
So Steve lays it out there for us. Your comments encouraged via Twitter @Newsmax TV, #America's Forum.